Technology at its finest. You got to love it. That's all I could say. You got to love it. All right.
Love to hate it.
Yeah. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Mastermind RoundTable. The whole concept of this particular group is to keep us afloat during these tough times. Everybody, we put together enough people together that are in our industry where you can come up with some ideas on how we could survive. And that's it. John, what's going on? You're pointing to something. Is there something that I'm saying or?
No, I was just counting something.
Oh, very good. Anyway, so this is the SoundBroker Roundtable meeting. It's basically open to anyone in our industry and anyone who would like to get involved. And the whole concept is to support one another in this tough time of COVID, because it is tough. And for the first time, as I would say, we're all in the same boat together, but we're really not in the same boat together. We're all on the same body of water together. Some of us are in really nice cabin cruisers. Some of us are in rowboats. Some of us are in dinghies. And then there's some of us in the water with life vests. But the challenge is that the sharks are starting to swim our way. So for those people that are in the life vests, we need to throw them a line and try to get them back into the boat. And so that's why I put everybody together. We're very fortunate today to have Timeless Publications here with us, because what I am hearing right now, I'm hearing this, maybe you're hearing it as well. And by the way, this is not the Jan Landy show. I want everybody to participate. Okay, so what we're hearing today is different stories from different people. Like David Sherman said last week, there's some people that are really not telling us what's going on. They are hiding that they're not doing as well as they are, and we have to be diligent to maybe to throw them the lifeline or a life rope to try to help them get together. And that's why we're trying to put our minds together, because logically speaking, it just seems that there's got to be a solution to make money during this tough time. That's what I'm saying. So I've got a couple of things to talk about, and then one of the things is, and George, I'm hoping that George and Nook, I'm hoping that you're going to expand on this as well. But the reality is that people want to be entertained, and for the first time in the history of my life, is that whenever things got really bad, the worse it got, the more people wanted to be entertained. They would go out, they would party, and still, even today, the same thing is happening. Because if you look at, for example, what's going on, like, for example, there was a show called in Chicago, the Baby Show. And as you could see from this picture that I'm throwing up, is that they were all in their cars, and the baby said, "Hey, come on, get out of the car. Come on down." And then there was also this other event with the chain smokers in New York, where the guys from Goldman Sachs threw a private party at $25,000 a head. And as you could see, the need for entertainment is phenomenal. So what I am saying to you is that there is a need out there, and we have to figure out as a group how we're going to accomplish our goals, and that is to survive during these tough times. So that's where I'm at. Anybody want to throw in any advice on this, or anybody have any comments right now on what they want to say?
Well, I could start off by saying that there's a lot of sort of excitement about the whole drive-in movement. And of course, Chip, you would know about this. Having just done a drive-in show, 2 weeks ago in St. Louis there. In fact, as an early Christmas present, I shouldn't tell you this, but we have your setup for Monstero is on the cover of the next issue of Front of House that you'll get later in the week.
Outstanding, thank you.
And but I mean, drive-in shows are not the ultimate answer. It's not it's not a thing where you can pack 6,000 people into an arena and do a show. You just can't have those kind of numbers with a drive-in show.
Is it even financially feasible?
Well, that's. I think Live Nation wanted to do some tests last week, 2 weeks ago, when he did this series in St. Louis, Nashville, and Indianapolis, and they started off the first night with Brad Paisley, and then he did St. Louis, then he jumped on a plane and he went to Indianapolis the next night and did another drive-in show, and then he did a final drive-in show in Nashville. But yeah, the feasibility of that it's tough. there's not a lot of people,
They
and I
can't be
don't think
making
you
money,
can,
right?
you can't charge $250, a ticket for those kind of shows either.
Live Nation lost $1 million that weekend on those 9 shows.
Yeah.
Well, I've got something to say about that, but before I don't want to interrupt that because we can come back to it. But we have a special guest in the room, Michael Strickland from Bandit Lights, who is really single-handedly in our industry forging ahead, getting the Senate to come along, because right now they're about ready to go on vacation next week or this Friday. So, Michael, I know you've been very busy, and I really appreciate you coming in. I'm sure you know some of the people in the room. If I didn't introduce you correctly, please introduce yourself correctly. And, Michael, why don't you say a couple of words for what you've been working on?
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Jan. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted? Can you hear
are
me?
definitely unmuted. You can use a
Okay,
little
good.
more level, but you're unmuted.
I don't know that I control level on this end.
Okay, cool.
But anyway, thank you very much. Apologize for being late. I had another Zoom that went long. And anyway, I'm going to assume that you all know the backstory. There's no point in talking about the journey to get here. Here's where we are. Because of the people I know, I've got extraordinary access to 4 senators and 2 congressmen, and I talk to them and to their staffs on a daily basis. I talk to 3 different lobbyists and a host of other people. And then through communications like this, which, I talk to you, I email you, you email people, I can now track that when I send out an email, it goes to right at 1 million people. For instance, Live Event Coalition has 40,000 people. Sure Microphones has 10,000 people, et cetera, et cetera. You can do the math. NEVA, NITO, they all have thousands of people. And so the reach of when I send out an e-blast has been incredible. And I may have covered this last time we spoke, but when we did the July, I think it was July 4th e-blast from NAM, 2 people had signed on to the restart bill, which is the bill that I hope comes to fruition. And that was the 2 original sponsors. No one had signed on. Well, we did a NAM blast, and we got 12 more senators. I didn't count the congressman. But then on July 16th, when we did what I call the D-Day email that sent out to everybody, and the press has been just phenomenal. The entertainment press has been unbelievable. Without them, we wouldn't be where we are. But after that, 22 senators signed on. And we're now up to, now this has increased today because they don't refresh till tomorrow, but we have 47 senators, 3 which signed up yesterday, and 78 Congress people, 6 that signed up yesterday. And if you go look on the congressional website, there's a spreadsheet that shows you the dates. I sent that out once of when they signed up, and you can see July 5th is when the 12 people signed up, and then, June 5th, and then July 16th is when the mass started signing up. And then the next significant event was 4 days ago when I sent out to those of you on the email list what I call the Howard Schultz letter. And Howard Schultz, the guy that started Starbucks, got together 100 people and signed this letter. Basically, if you haven't seen it, it says, save small business, do the Restart Act. That thing went globally. I mean, it went to France, Germany, China. If you go Google Howard Schultz last 24 hours, Howard Schultz letter last 24 hours, your screen will just fill with newspapers that picked it up. And it was fighting our cause, not us specifically, but small business generally. And I was asked to sign it. So as were a couple of other entertainment people. So there were entertainment people on there, which gave it teeth. Well, the next day, I've got a universe of 30 or 40 political people that I communicate with. The next day, about 30 of them reached out to me and sent me the letter going, have you seen this letter? Well, I immediately replied to all of them and went, yeah, did you look at who signed it? And of course, none of them had looked at the signatures. But 1, they were impressed with the letter, and 2, the fact that I and a couple of other entertainment people had signed it really gave it and us teeth. And so the impact of that letter, I can't tell you how phenomenal it is, because we as a group collectively, because of all the phenomenal press people, and I see Nook sitting there. Thank you very much, Nook, for all the things that PLSN has done. and all of the media people. It's just been phenomenal. Each time we've had a call to action, it's been put up virtually everywhere. You folks have emailed it everywhere, and what you don't realize is it goes to this person and that person, and say it's up to about 1 million people. And we've looped in the pyro people, and yesterday I looped in the laser people. They had never been looped in, but they came to me through the pyro people and the Broadway people. The PRG people brought the Broadway people in, and the film and TV people have come in, and the NEVA people for the venues, and the NITO people for the talent people. I mean, we're all kind of lumped together. And I've said before, the power in it is the fact that NAM means something to legislators. NAM got $1.4 billion 2 years ago for music education. So when legislators see the NAM letterhead, it means something. Bandit Lights doesn't mean anything. PLSN doesn't mean anything. NEVA doesn't mean anything. NITO doesn't mean anything, but NAM does. Now, that doesn't mean to stop those other endeavors. The weight of all these endeavors is what makes this go. But what we're doing is working, and I've shared this with some of you. The day after we did the D-Day email on July 16th, I got reached out to, and Chris Cushing, the lobbyist for NAM, got reached out to, and Mary from NAM got reached out to. And basically the message from the lobbyist was this, from the legislators was this. If you recall, on the 16th, if you got that email, we didn't give you the general mailbox address. We gave you the chief of staff's address and the legislative director's address. And you know where that rang to? That rang to their cell phone. You were talking to their email, their personal email. And that did two things. Number one, it pissed them off. And that's the calls that we got. We got all these calls going, stop it, stop it. I have got over 1,000 messages on my cell phone, and I have to just sit and throw them away. I mean, all day long, my cell phone's ringing, and it's the same message over and over, and I'm throwing them away, and I'm trying to find the message from my husband or my wife. So Chris and I got together, and Mary, and talked and laughed about it. But it's a double-edged sword. One, we've upset them, but two, we got our message across. You know, they know who we are. And then in talking to all of my friends in legislation, they have all told me the same thing, which is by a factor of 10, entertainment, live events has reached out to them by a factor of 10, more than any other market sector, because of what we've been doing, because of the media. I see Terry Lowe. Hi, Terry. Thank you very much. But because of leading this endeavor and getting this word out, we have swamped them in communication. People will say, no, what about restaurant folks? They're way bigger than us. They are. But if you think about it, you've got the owner and the manager and the assistant manager and maybe the beverage manager, and everybody else is a 1099 food service person. Do you think restaurants have this kind of a network? Do you think restaurants reach out to people this way? Do you think restaurants have magazines that are this in touch with restaurant workers? They don't. And I worked through this with the lobbyists and other people. And that's why the restaurant voice was nowhere near as big as ours. We have this wonderful network of people through all of these phenomenal organizations and all of these great publications and all of these people like you that I email you and you email them and they email them. And like I say, I've been able to account for up to 1 million people that a single email that I send out gets to. And so the restaurant people don't have that sort of a network. They have that many people, but neither do the cruise lines people, and neither do the bowling alley people. And you know, there's a whole host of people that just, they're big, but they don't have the touch that we have. And that leads me up to, okay, where are we now? What do we need to do next? Consider we're in a kitchen and we're cooking. Well, right now there's 4 people in the kitchen. There's Steve Mnuchin, there's Mark Meadows, there's Pelosi, and there's Schumer. Those are the people that are meeting. They met last Saturday morning for 2 hours. Sunday, their staffs met. They've been meeting Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They're meeting in Nancy Pelosi's office. The senators are kind of sitting outside of that, kind of sending notes in, if you will, literally sending notes in. So right now, the real information that you would or would not get is coming from those 4 people. They're in the kitchen cooking. What are they cooking with? Everything that's in there. What's in there is heroes and heels. That's what's in there. So for us, there's nothing in heroes for us, nothing at all. What's for us in heels? the Rubio Senate Bill 4321, which as written, and some of you have gotten my emails, as written gives us 10 weeks. It also triggers upon, the trigger for your 10 weeks is your last year, starting with the day you get the loan. Well, 6, 7, 8 of your months, you made no money. So if you use the last year snugged up to where you are now, you're not going to trigger a very big loan. And then the third piece is it's a $2 million maximum. So I and others have been hammering the Rubio people to make the 3 changes. Make the time frame be 2019. Make the limit be 4 million, 6 million, 8 million, some bigger number, and make it 20 weeks, not 10. I actually wrote the exact words as a lawyer would write them, because I went to law school, and I actually wrote it. Many of you have gotten those from me, and I concentrated on our Florida people because they have the biggest voice, but we've had hundreds of people emailing Rubio and his staff, here's where you need to make these 3 minuscule changes. And they are minuscule, they're tiny, but they've gotten the language, they know what we need. So there are 3 paths for more money, which is what you're interested in. Path 1 is they do nothing. I've been assured by both sides of the aisle that's not going to happen. Path 2 is they lift language from heroes and heels only, which means restart is not considered. And if they do lift language from restart, and it's the what I call muted Senate Bill 4321, which doesn't take care of us, we'll have to fix that. Now, again, I'm fighting to fix it now, and I'll get to this in a minute. And then the last one is they go outside to the car and they get the grocery bag they left, which is the Restart Act, and they bring it into the kitchen. And I believe that there's a good chance that will happen, and here's why. We have gotten so much critical mass behind this Restart Act. As I said, there's over 120 legislators behind it right now. We've gotten so much critical mass. There's so much talk, and the Howard Schultz letter was so powerful that they understand the big fixes there. And the reason that the restart works for us is, in a nutshell, you can get 45% of the money that you grossed last year. So if you grossed $10 million last year, you'll be able to get 4.5 million. What percentage is forgiven is just like in PPP. It's what you spend on employees and employee benefits and insurance and all of those things, plus rent, plus interest on a mortgage. They've also snuck in interest on note payments, and they've snuck in PPP. They've snuck in or put in damage from anything riot related, and a couple of other things. So there's a little bit broader category of forgivable items. So many of you, if you look at that, let's say you did 10 million last year. Well, I can get 4.5 million. Most of the people I've talked to said, holy cow, I can get way more money than I need, because I only need 2 million. So I'm only going to get 2 million. My advice to you would be, if you qualify for a bigger number, think through March, because the money that would carry you through December is one thing, but even if we get started up in January, February, I don't think you'll be going 110 miles an hour till March. So think March. Now, do I know which language they're going to put in there? No, and I can't get any inside information. Neither can the lobbyist. Why? Because it's 4 people in a room. Now, of the paths that could happen, they could figure it out by Friday, vote Monday and Tuesday. They could not figure it out by Friday, come back and do it Monday and Tuesday. And I think one of those 2 things is going to happen. 2 hours ago, though, I got a text from Marsha Blackburn, and there was a private meeting of Republicans, and I'm not violating any trust. I'm sure a lot of people know this by now, but Mitch McConnell called the Republican senators together and told them, if this isn't worked out by Friday, there's not going to be a bill. Now, I don't know if that was political posturing or if he's going to stand by it, but that was thrown out there. So, do I believe that there's going to be a bill? Yes, I do. I can't get an answer on, is it going to be restart or is it going to be 4321, which is already on the table? My greater sense tells me that they're going to have to go the restart route, because there's been such a huge push. And it's not just us, the restaurants are pushing, and all these other market sectors are pushing for that. And any solutions short of that It doesn't take care of the venue people, doesn't take care of the pyro people, doesn't take care of the laser people, doesn't take care of anybody who largely employs 1099 people. Now, there is one difficulty potentially to the restart bill, and that is this: they haven't defined in there what mechanism funds it. I've been pushing, whether it be restart or 4321, let's use the existing paperwork that all of you executed with the SBA for your initial round of PPP so that you don't have to go through that again. If they try to stand up another set of paperwork for whatever they do, we all know it will be 2 to 3 weeks for them to stand up that paperwork and that process. And we all know that you will then go through an absolute nightmare getting that paperwork done to then get the money. But it isn't even the headache of the nightmare. The issue with it is, if they stand up a new program, nobody will see money until late September, early October. And again, that's not a solution for most people. Most people are beyond out of money now. August 15th was always my target date to get money in hand. That's still possible if they pass this thing Friday, and if they put restart in it Friday, and if they're reliant on the existing SBA paperwork and don't make you execute again and vote on it Monday or Tuesday, we could have money second or third week of next month easily. And that is my goal. I don't control that. A lot of people are pushing for that because they know not only do we need money, but time is of the essence. Doesn't mean we win that battle. So that's kind of where it is right now. One question that comes up often, and I'll jump into the vaccine in a second because that's part of this. The issue of what if I do some 1099 and some W-2, that has not been resolved because the ability to collect PPP based on a W-2 payment resides with the payer, and they just don't know a way, and I don't know a way, and no one knows a way for those people that did some W-2 and some 1099 to shift that ability to reclaim that from the payer to the payee. There is no easy way to do that. If you had to ask my opinion, I don't think that's going to work. Now, in the restart bill and in the 4321 bill, people that are pure 1099, you too can go in and claim money. And in the case of the restart, if you grossed $100,000 last year via 1099, you can go claim $45,000. And you could actually pay yourself the whole $45,000 and have it forgiven. And again, that's the best possible scenario. And talking about our friends in venues, it turns out they employ 4, 5, 6, 8 people, and then most of the venue staff is 1099. So for them, the few people they employ via W-2 doesn't drive a very big number for them to collect. If you use restart, it's irrelevant because the collection is based on your gross income, and you get 45% of your gross income. So that's the thing. Now, next steps. And again, I apologize for being so long-winded, but I want you to understand this. Next steps. Hopefully in the next 30 hours, we will have a very focused call to action. And the reason we have to wait is we can't have a focused call to action until we know what the hell's on the bill. So hopefully I will have an advanced copy of the bill in the next 24 hours. And then I'll work with Mary at NAM and with Chris at the lobbying firm, and we'll come up with a very focused ask. Now, what does that mean? Let's suppose that they go with the HEALS language, which falls short, even though we have hit them and hit them and hit them and give them the changes. Then we'll do a call to action for those 3 changes. And it's very simple. Here's the 3 changes you've got to make, because once they stand that bill up, we're not going to be able to say, no, we don't want 4321, we want restart. Once that bill is once I get a copy of it, it's done. So at that point, we would go argue those 3 elements of 4321. Let's suppose that they don't use 4321 and they use restart. If they use restart as it's written, I don't know that we're going to need to argue anything other than to vote for the bill. Let's suppose that they do drop in part of restart, but they leave out part of restart. Therein would lie our conversation, and I hope that makes sense to you. We can't tell you what to go ask for until we know what's in the bill. And Chris and Mary and I are sitting on pins and needles, and we email each other multiple times a day. What have you heard? What have you heard? What have you heard? And we just won't know until we get an advance copy of the bill to look at. But once we do get it, we'll write a call to action. It will go out to my email network. It will go to Terry and all the other media people who will do the things that they do. NAM will post it on their website. And once again, we'll have this phenomenal impact in a moment. But at that point, it will be very important that everyone execute very, very quickly to get the word out, because at that moment, they will need to know those changes need to be made. And it's easy to change language. That's what you call it. You call it changing language. The Senate is in, technically, they're in until noon on Friday. Usually they break at 4 o'clock on Thursday and go home. I'm confident they're going to work till 5 o'clock on Friday. They may even go into Monday and Tuesday. The House is off and has been off. None of them are scheduled to be back till September the 8th. They have done a thing in the House called suspended the rules. So once they suspended the rules, they can vote remotely, and it only takes 2/3 of the House to approve it. And again, I'm told by both sides of the aisle, and I do believe this, there are enough people in both the House and the Senate that want relief. that they're going to win both ways. It's not going to be one party or the other. It's going to be tremendous bilateral support. We also know that there are going to be some Democrats and some Republicans that just won't support it for their own reasons. But we do know that there's enough people to support it to get it passed once they get it created and into the pipeline. So once the Senate passes under the suspension of rules, it'll go to the House. They'll take 2 or 3 days, and the House will pass it. Then the president will sign it, and then whatever it is, then the money will begin to flow. If you had to ask my opinion, do I think it will happen? Yes. I feel more likely than not they'll get something done by this Friday evening, and then they'll vote on it in the Senate Monday or Tuesday. Then it'll go to the House remotely, and by the end of next week it should be signed. And I like to think it would go to the president's desk very quickly. Behind the scenes, while that's happening, Treasury will be writing the regs, and that leads me to my next step. We'll potentially have a call to action in the next 30 hours. If something comes up in the Treasury regulations, which is a document you really never see, that's painful, then I will start another one of these to get the Treasury regulations changed. None of us can reach the Treasury to do that. I have touched to Mnuchin through Lamar Alexander and Jimmy Duncan, and I give Lamar and Jimmy stuff, and they give it to Mnuchin. So I have a little bit touch, but that's not that powerful. But we would begin another call to action back through our senators and Congress people to have them go lobby Treasury to make whatever changes may need to be made in Treasury. And that's what we did. If you remember, the initial time frame was 8 weeks for the initial PPP, and then they took it to 24. But the problem was we'd all spent it, hadn't we? But in this case, I want to get the Treasury regs, if they're wrong, corrected very quickly so we don't experience that again. So those are the things that lay in front of us, is another call to action in the next 30 hours, and then potentially a call to action for Treasury regulations a week from now, if that's needed. And let me jump from that to the vaccine situation. Again, in my role at the hospital, nothing.
1 second, Michael, because I really appreciate what you're doing. And I will tell you that, we have Terry Lowe in the room, the publisher of Timeless. We've got George, and we've got Nook. We've got some really powerful publishers and editors in the room, and I'm sure that I speak for them. But before you go into the vaccine, you gave us so much information. I was wondering if maybe George or Terry or Nook had a question for you, and then we could talk about the vaccine, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. Yeah.
George? Okay. Nook?
Well, what I see happening is we're all following Michael Strickland as a nation right now. He's been a beacon for us to come through. And by the time I write something up, 48 hours later, there's new news to add. So it's such an ongoing situation that it is optimistic, to be honest. It's keeping a whole generation of people engaged that don't know what the hell is happening if we don't follow him and what he's doing. So I think it's important to hear that news and to let the other people know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel that we're hoping for, and that it's not a whole, bad scenario.
Well, thank you, Nook. And to your point, if there's bad news, I'll tell you. I'm not just here shining these things on. That's why, and I kind of, maybe I mentioned this in the beginning. I'm sorry, I talk all day long. The one thing that still scares the living dog out of me is state's money. Did I talk about that, the state's money?
Not that
Okay, the Democrats were at $1 trillion, the Republicans were at $0. Nothing I'm about to tell you is public, but it's true because I've gotten it from both sides of the aisle. The Democrats are willing to come down to $500 billion for states. The Republicans, yesterday at 6 o'clock, because I worked this thing on the phone and the computer and internet from 5 in the morning till 1 in the morning. And last night at 6 o'clock, talking to both sides of the aisle, the Dems are going to come down to 500 million. Why? Because there's enough of them that want to get reelected that they've got to do that. 500, the reason that 500 works, and this is kind of inside baseball, 500 will give New York, California, Illinois, and 2 other states the money that they need to clear off all of their age-old debt. It's the money the Republicans don't want to give. It doesn't just clear up COVID, it clears up all of the age-old debt they've had for a long time. Then what's left gives every state enough to cover the rest of the state's COVID losses. Well, so the Democrats have figured out that number will make them happy. Well, last night, the word was the Republicans, who were at 150 billion. Yeah, okay, we can get there. Well, 2.5 hours ago, 3 hours ago, and talking back to my sane folks, all of a sudden, no, we can't get there. And that's what scares me to death is we could get everything else worked out. And if they can't get the state's money worked out, it kills everything that we did. And so that scares me. But back to what you said, Nook, about the information, you're 100% correct. Nobody knows much of anything. And it, it's not me. I'm just the guy that talks to people all day long, and that's my job. If it wasn't for everybody on this call, if it wasn't for Nook and for Terry, who've done some phenomenal work, and for everybody at PLSN, and if it wasn't for Neva and Nita and IAPA and the Pyro Association, and I mean, just and Live Event Coalition, and I mean, just there's no red or blue here. There's no PRG and Christie and Bandit and Claire Brothers and Sound Image and Spectrum. I mean, there's none of that. There's show business. There's the entertainment industry. We're all in this together. And I hate that expression, but we are. And the reason this is working, Nook, is because of the great work that if you take the press out of this, if you take NAM out of this, I'm not sure what it looks like, and again, thank you guys for what you do. But you're 100% correct. It's about getting information. And for every letter I write, there's literally 5 I want to write, because every minute something changes, I want to go, oh, I got to tell them. And I go, oh, wait a minute, because I know it's going to change 4 more times. So I try to limit it.
Yeah. Well, you're really working hard for us. We really appreciate it. I guess anybody have any other questions, or can we let them talk about the vaccine right now? Michael Brown.
Question, Michael, do you happen to know what the price tag is for any of those bills? Because Pelosi came out with a real interesting statement, I thought, earlier this week when she mentioned the specific number that she would be happy with for relief. And it wasn't a random, it wasn't a range, it was a really specific number. So I wondered if that correlated to anything.
Well, right now, the Democrats, the theory on the heroes and everything they want is 3.5 trillion. That's their number. Now, that's saber rattling. They know a lot of that's not going to happen. The Democrats, the Republicans, and there's some that want 0. But the Republicans started out at 1 trillion with a view to take the 1 trillion to 1.35. But the undertone is, okay, we're going to go to 1.5 trillion. And the undertone now is it's probably going to end up around 1.75 to 2 trillion.
Yeah.
And that's driven by a lot of things. Number one, the state's money, there's $500 billion right there. So you take the $1 million they wanted to do and you add the 500 they didn't want to do, they're at 1.5. And then you start scooting other things up. And changing the PPP, excuse me, the enhanced unemployment. I don't know if I mentioned that, but both sides are now, it's going to be 600. I mean, I'm hearing that it's going to be 600. While the Republicans don't want the damage, although it creates a lot of issues by overpaying people, it creates more political damage by not doing it. So the Republicans have gotten to the 600. But the point is that the math of the 600 drives another, I think it's $200 billion that they didn't account for. So now you're at 1.7, you know.
And they have no idea where they're getting this money, right? They're just going to print more of it.
Our grandchildren.
Our grandchildren. Well, that's good. At least our Chip Self.
Hey, so if they go with the restart option, what does that do to the 7A expansion stuff? Because I mean, like for my situation, that 7A expansion could be huge.
What are you referring to specifically?
In the HEALS Act, there's a expansion to the SBA 7A loan that allows you to get, I think it's up to $10 million, 20 years, 1%.
I can't tell you how that's going to end up, but that's actually being worked on. Neither party considers that that's a separate issue. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. I just didn't know if it was a piece or not.
Luckily, nobody considers that at play. That's being looked at holistically. Like I don't know if you saw this, they redid the Main Street loan 3 weeks ago and changed the regs about not-for-profits because it was not so helpful for many not-for-profits. So they went and both parties said, yeah, that's good, and they changed some of the Main Street stuff. They're working on SBA loan changes over there, EIDL loan changes over there, and those to me are not political issues. Those are things that they can come together on. Now, I'm not saying they will, but that conversation is not wrapped into this one.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, Dan. I'm optimistic. You said best case scenario in the second or third week of next month. Did you mean August or September?
What month are we in? We're in September.
We're well in. Okay.
Excuse me. August. Sorry.
That's what
my calendar.
That's what I thought. All right.
Yeah.
Daytime or nighttime, Michael? I don't know. Weekends are.
If they sign it the 7th, we could theoretically have money. Let's be honest, by the 28th. And Sean, that's a very relevant question. One of the things I've done in this whole journey, I have talked literally via email and text and whatever to thousands of people. It's been a lot of fun, but the story's the same, which is everybody's out of money, and don't feel like you're the outlier. Any of you, you're not the outlier. Everybody here's robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that includes the biggest of companies. I mean, the biggest 3 companies in our industry, PRG, Solotech, and 4Wall, they don't benefit from this because of their size, but they have their own extraordinary financial, as we all know, extraordinary financial struggles. And I don't know if you all knew this, but Jan, you may know this, but sometime today, Solotech put $123 million worth of equipment up for sale on Facebook, and they took it down an hour later.
I did know about it. They sent it to me in advance. They are, we don't know what they're doing over there at Solotech yet, but I know that everyone has called me that I'm working with and said, listen, if you get a buyer for something, call me. We're not going to give it away, but we'll make them a deal. And so when we come back, we could rebuy it without losing too much money. So I've heard that from everybody. But the reality is that the thing that's killing us the most is the uncertainty of not knowing about tomorrow. And it's not just tomorrow, it's the day after tomorrow. And so when you tell us what's going on, we can't get that information anywhere else but from you. And so I'm very appreciative of you coming. I mean, like, for example, Terry's publications, they don't come out every day, and if they've got information on their website, how many times a day do we go to their website, because we're competing with so much different input all day long. Terry, what do you got to say? How could you assist Michael in getting this information out and dispersing it much quicker?
Oh, he already is.
We try and do that every week in our email newsletter. It comes out Monday for PLSN and Tuesday for
for FOH, if something's really important, we'll do a special email blast for it as well. You know, it all depends on how crucial it is to get some sort of information out there. But I'm sure Michael has mentioned this earlier. And I apologize for being late, but the NAM Association has been very, very instrumental in helping us do our lobbying as well. And we started a coalition with them about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago now by doing a Zoom and talking about this. And Michael took the ball and ran with it and got with Mary Lewerson from NAM, and they've been working together along with their paid lobbyist in DC. So just wanted to let everybody know that, you know, NAM as an organization has spread their wings and have included us in their lobbying efforts, and it's just something that they're the only trade association that's got the ability to pay for those type of services
and the voice.
Yeah.
I went over all that before you got on, Terry, but thank you very much.
Okay.
Mike,
right, well,
Jan, let me address something you said a second ago about
the uncertainty.
The uncertainty. Let me give you that ties into the vaccine, and it ties into what our future potentially looks like. Now, again, this is part fact and part opinion. Again, in my role at the hospital, the medical community is just on fire about both the Moderna and the AstraZeneca solutions, just on fire about them. And Russia and the UK have already announced October shots. We believe with the AstraZeneca solution, October shots, and with the Moderna solution, November shots. There's 2 other solutions that are also in the third phase of the clinical trials. So you've got 4 solutions, and those are supposed to be this side of New Year as well. The AstraZeneca solution takes 2 shots 28 days apart to be fully inoculated. But the point in all that rambling is both the AstraZeneca and the Moderna have been 100% effective with little to no side effects. And that's what has gotten everyone's attention. And people go, well, you can't do that because it doesn't work that way. Well, it's working that way because we are literally throwing billions of dollars at it, and it's never been done before. So I have great confidence that we're going to have vaccines being given out. All 4 companies are making 100 million doses for the United States. So we'll begin inoculating. The only issue will be who gets the 100 million, because there's 380 million of us. But that's why I believe October, November, December, January, I think we'll be largely inoculated. And I think we'll be able to get back to work February, March. And the only thing that would change that, in my opinion, would be is if all 4 of these solutions are busts. And that, you know, knowing that medical piece is very different than just not knowing at all. Because I talk to a lot of people who say, we're not going to be back to work till 2022. And I go, what makes you say that? Well, it's just really bad. And you know, Mark Geiger from William Morris came out and said that, and said it very publicly, and it got in a lot of publications. And Mark's very respected, and I like the guy, but I'm not sure where he was coming at that from. But that's why it was important to talk about the vaccines. And there's also a whole bunch of treatments that are online. So I do think we'll have a good handle on it in October, November, December. And I think it'll be a very different landscape as the new year rolls around.
Well, I for one sure hope so, because as I was saying before, I don't know if you heard me talk about it before you got in the room. I'm not sure if it started when the meeting started or I was talking before, but if you look at what's going on, like with the chain smoker show in New York or the baby in Chicago, people want to get out there. They just want to be entertained. They're dying to be entertained, literally and figuratively dying to be entertained. And this is the first time in our lives where they're not being able to be entertained. How much more Netflix, can people watch? I think we're at the end of the Netflix thing. Plus, there's no more new. I talk to people and they say, there's nothing else left to watch on Netflix. There's nothing left to watch on HBO. I've watched it all. And I don't want to be, I want to talk about something that's really important to me. And that is the love of life. And we all have this love of life. Everybody in this room and everybody who's listening to me right now, they didn't get into this business because they had nothing else better to do with their life. They made a decision that this is what I want to do with my life. We're not like when we're not working in the fields, we're working in the entertainment business, and we're working to entertain people. So every one of us loves what we're doing. So for us not to be able to do that, there's somebody in this room that I have a lot of respect for, and I'm not going to mention his name if he wants to pipe up what he's been doing this now for as long as I've been, almost, forever. And yesterday when I spoke to him, he was driving a truck, and he that's because he's doing everything he can to keep his business afloat. And we're all in that boat. So the sooner we could get that cure to get us out, put the mask on. Now we're seeing more and more of the red states saying, hey, you got to wear a mask. And we know for sure the two things that happen: social distancing and covering your face. Now, the vaccine's going to be great. Michael, what's your opinion on how many people are anti-vaxxers that are going to hold us back?
It's another good question. I had it in the last go round. I don't know the number, but we discussed that fairly often at the hospital. And statistics they gave me, there is some large number of people that are anti-vaxxers, but apparently less than 50% of them are anti-vaxxers in this situation. And how they identified that, I don't know. But we have been told from the American Medical Association that over half of the known anti-vaxxers have already come forward and said, yeah, I don't want measles or mumps or rubella, but I'm going to take one of these. So apparently the anti-vax mob is much smaller, and that they say almost insignificant. And then the last call, we had a whole conversation about how do you legally make people take a shot, and on and on and on. And the point of it is you can't. We'll never jump that hump because of civil rights and rights to privacy, and you're just kind of expending air. And the analogy I would give you is there's a law against murder, but people still murder one another. So there's not a law we can pass that's going to make people get a shot. Then they said, okay, how about, are you going to have a card? How will people know? My opinion, I don't think we'll get to that point. I just think we'll encourage vaccines, but I don't know how you enforce people getting vaccines.
So I have one more question, and I want to hand it over to Nook, and I know he's got a bunch of questions to ask. But you're doing so much right now, working with Congress, working with the Senate. A quick question: the Senate is not going on vacation. They're going to stay. They're going to stay active. Is the Senate staying active?
Well, technically, their session ends at noon on Friday. I don't know. I do believe they're going to work through 5 o'clock Friday. If they don't come to a resolution, I would like to think they'll come back Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I don't know that, but I'm getting conversation until that message from Marcia that I told you about. Up until 2 hours ago, yeah, they were going to come back next week and get it done. But as I said, then Marcia reached out to me and told me that McConnell had just told the Republicans if we don't get it done by 5 o'clock Friday, there's not going to be a deal. Now, one part of me thinks that's McConnell trying to, jerk a knot in the chain of his own people, come to the table. And the biggest positive in all this is all these people up for re-election. They're going to vote for whatever. They're going to vote yes for whatever, because they don't want to go back to their re-election campaign and be known as the guy or the gal that didn't support the relief package.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I want to know, what are you doing as far as your business? You're spending so much time on this. How are you neglecting your own bandit lights for the good of all of the rest?
No, I'm sitting at my desk right now at my office. The Knoxville office of Bandit never shuts because it does all the installation and integration and construction. And I do that too. But again, I've got a great team, and they do what they do, and the oversight that, believe me, at this point in time with revenue where it is, there's not as much oversight needed. I do a whole lot of motivational stuff and a whole lot of conversation.
All right. Hey, Nook, I want to bring you in right now into the conversation, because I would think that you speak to more people on a day-to-day basis than almost any one of us. What are you seeing out there? What's the feeling that you're getting from the people in our industry?
Nook, before you speak, let me set you up. If Terry and Nook and Timeless had not taken the Parnellis 3 years ago to the NAM show, which I think I shared with this group before, I didn't understand. If he hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here today, because him tucking Parnellis into that, and then Parnellis being there 3 years, and then the relationship with Joe and the people at NAM, all of that created this. And if we, thank you to Timeless, to Terry, to Nook, all of that led to this coalition, if you will. And if you guys had never done what you did, we'd still be a bunch of cats being herded. And with that, I'll shut up, Nook.
Well, it's been one
Thank
of the
you,
biggest
Michael.
things, the questions that have been asked and answered as of today is like LDI is canceled. We know that's gone away. NAM, we're not sure exactly what's going to happen. It's up to them to make an official announcement. I can't talk on their behalf, but I think everybody misses the social interaction. The fact is January is the slowest month for most of us in the live event business. So NAM turned out to be an optimum place for us to all hang out. And even if we just catch a beer and do the grip and grin with those people that you don't see every year, that's going to be sorely missed. I mean, we're already quarantined now to the fact of that we need to call our friends all the time and do wellness checks. I mean, that's an important thing. I think by now all of us have probably lost a friend or two from suicide. And the depression's real. And it's almost like people are hanging on Michael's words. Like, what did he say today? What can we do for the next level? What did you hear? And it's good. And I watch everybody pass that news on, and we sit and wait. But the worst part is the limbo. And like one thing I don't understand, Michael, is you mentioned that, all right, say on the 7th on Friday, if they do come to an agreement and do a deal, why does it take till the 28th for people to get money? Why is there a 3-week run when some of these companies are holding on by their teeth?
Well, that would be the soonest, Nook, and here's why. If the 7th they say, okay, here's the bill, and they've got agreement, they then have to vote on it. And I think there's a possibility the Senate could vote Friday and approve it. But even if the Senate voted Friday to approve it, the House has to vote remotely, and that would take probably 3 days, which pushes it to the 12th. And then after the 12th, it has to be signed by the president. By law, he has 10 days to do it. Now, I'd like to believe that if they sign it the 12th, that he would sign it the 13th. I like to believe that. But on PPP, it took 4 days from the time it was put on his desk till he signed it. Now, I don't know why, but let's say he signs it the 14th. Then the Treasury's got to come in and do Treasury regs. And assuming that we get to use the system that was set up for PPP to administer this, the Treasury still has to issue Treasury regs, and by law they have 10 days to do that. I think they'll get it done in 5, which puts it to the 19th. And so once the Treasury regs are in place, then they have to push the program out, which means you then have to go to your local lender and fill out a loan application, and that will take you to the 21st, and then it has to be approved, and that's where I'm coming up with the 28th. And that's lightning speed. That's making a whole lot of assumptions.
I think assumptions is all we have to go on right now. I mean, in so much of the business, it's all speculation. Yep. And it's not just on the part of Congress. It's all of us that own, mom and pop lighting companies and that are getting by and saying, okay, well, we can float ourselves now, or maybe we start digging into our own personal pockets or remortgaging our own houses to keep something going. Or do we say, screw it, I'm 62, let's just cash it, and not on a scale like Solotech, but there's a lot of people thinking that way.
Absolutely. And I think, Nook, that the answer that you're looking for here is if on the 7th, or let's say on the 10th or 11th, it's passed the House and the Senate, at least at that moment, money's coming. You don't know when, but money's coming. So I think, let's say it's the 11th. If it passes the House and the Senate on the 11th, then all of the procedure that has to happen, however short or long that may be, I think the decision you would make knowing, well, I'm getting some money. So you could make a short-term rescue decision for yourself, knowing that I'm going to get money in the next 30 to 45 days. Whereas to your point, not knowing, it's a different decision, isn't it? You're like, shit, am I going to get any money or not?
No, but I mean, if I have to go and pull $100,000 or $200,000 out of my savings, then now I've got to, or out of, the market, I've got to pay the taxes on that I don't get back when I get that money from the PPP and pay myself.
But I think there will be a lot of comfort once the Senate and the House pass a bill, regardless of the time past that. If they don't pass a bill, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Do you think they've learned anything from what happened with the PPP, where they went from 8 weeks then they extended it? Because most of us that got that PPE went right through it right quick in the 8 weeks, and then all of a sudden it extended and really left me in the dark. And I'm sure a lot of us were in that same boat.
Yeah, no, I've had that conversation, and what most of us tend to forget was on March the 28th. We were asked to go into shutdown for 14 days to flatten the curve. Everyone's view, and I've talked to the senators about this, everyone's view from the president to the newest congressperson was that this thing was 30 days at the worst case. And they were just short-sighted. You probably all were too. I didn't, I thought 30 days, 45 days, and I was already planning, which shows were going back out. And no one knew how big, how bad, and how deep this was. And that's why they made the mistake. And I think we can all agree. That's what I thought. I thought 30 days will be good.
Well, I was overseas at the time in January when it came out. And then all of a sudden I was in Thailand and I saw all of a sudden, like one day, masks, everybody was wearing a mask, and you couldn't buy a mask in Thailand. And we were hearing what was going on in China over there. And there was a big scare. When I finally got to the airport in the last week of January, everybody was wearing a mask, and I'd never seen that before. And all throughout, and it was very uncomforting to get on a plane, and the flight attendants were wearing masks. So I realized that this had to be much bigger than what I had thought it was going to be. So I guess, when you just focus in on America, it's very difficult to see the whole big picture, because we're in a big world right now, and everybody in the world is in that same boat. Although right now there are shows that are happening outside the world. I believe there's a in Taiwan. They just sold out a show, and they're going to be doing lots of shows there. But the whole thing is that we've got to do that social distancing. We got to be wearing the mask, but the money is important. So, Michael, what are you seeing other than the money coming in the door from the government? What are we doing right now? What is Bandit Lights doing to keep their lights afloat? What kind of shows are you doing?
We're fortunate because of how the company's built. We luckily had cash reserves that will carry us through the end of the year. What are we doing? None of us, even those of us that are doing shows, it's not significant income. When you got to have millions of dollars a week as a burn rate, it doesn't matter. But we've got this one off and that one off, and this streaming thing and that streaming thing, and our installation and integration business is still running well. And we had a whole lot of jobs in the pipeline because those things work 2 years out. Well, we've got a lot of those that are ongoing now. We've got a full staff. We never laid anybody off in any office. And there's a full staff here. They're gone now, but they were, all day, every day delivering the installations. But again, holistically, it's you couldn't support the company off of it. It's the cash that we had that kept us going. And you could beat that horse to death, but the people that are making shields and masks that have, quote, pivoted to do this or that, it doesn't support the company, and it won't. So we need the big money to come back from live shows. Now, what are we doing going forward? And I've revealed some of this. All of my time and energy is into this legislation. In the background, I'm working on 3 other initiatives that are going to be rolled out. Terry and Nook know as much as anybody about this. The next thing is going to be a call to action to get all the power companies and all of the vendors and all of the manufacturers to actually cough up $225 and join NAM. The next step after that is to get the relevant manufacturers to display at NAM. Let's become part of NAM. Let's get married to NAM. So those are two things moving forward. Another thing that's involved in that is the big question from day one is, what's the good housekeeping seal of approval for our industry? Well, there's not one, but the one that's standing there that seems to be the best is Jim Digby's ESA. And so we've begun going down that road with the NAM people about making ESE the good housekeeping seal of approval, so that we have an organization that represents us, that makes people comfortable, and getting that involved. And then the other thing I'm working on, which I don't know if I mentioned this earlier or not, but I realized that pyro, lasers, Broadway, a little bit of film and TV, and all of the manufacturers sit in a different boat. And I and others are going to have to work in September, October, November, December toward future legislation, because those people are going to need more help to get January, February, March, April, May, June. You know, they're just different. They are. And that's not lost on me. So we'll be doing those things too. But for now, I haven't talked about any of that to anybody, because the focus right now is this next relief package.
I'd like to bring Terry into the conversation right now, because Terry is the publisher. He's dealing with the manufacturers, and also George. You know, you're going out there and talking to people that are in the manufacturing world, whereas we might not be as much. What are you seeing the manufacturers, Terry? What are you hearing from them?
Well, you know, it's just not a pretty picture for anybody. There's no shows going on, so people aren't buying new gear. The gear's in the warehouse and it's been repaired, and there's just no reason to go out and do any major purchases at this point. I know that there were some pretty big packages that were sold, you know, in March and maybe even early April, but now it's just a trickle. It went from the Mississippi down to a little creek. So, you know, they're in the same boat as everybody in the rental and staging and in the production business. They're just holding on by their fingers. I know GLP, you know, they've had to, they kept people on for a long time, but I heard that they had to let a lot of people go. So there's one company, but you know, they're not going out of business. They're just scaling back to the point where they can survive. And
what they've done is a lot of them now have gotten rid of the warehouse staffs, the furloughs, other than running people that can do parts, shipments and that. The general consensus is that June 1st will be the date when they start selling gear again. Unfortunately, they just think they're going to have to support what they've got out there for the next 6 months. And some of it's tough. I mean, like Chip Self, he just bought a new PA. You know, now he's got to support that out there, and I'm sure pay for that. But other than that, I don't know of anybody else other than Chip that's bought anything new in the last 5 months. And they know that our whole business has to come back before them. So Michael is absolutely correct. The people like Elation and ADJ and Myers Audio and all these people might need some extra help, because they're not going to sell anything. The vendors, I mean, themselves have to rent what they have in the shelf just to recoup some money to get back on their feet. So the manufacturers are the hardest hit, I think.
Did you say June 1st, Nook?
Yeah.
Did you say June 1st before they start selling anything again? That's a long time from now.
Excuse me for talking about lighting, but it's what I know about. And to your point, Nook, I talk to all the lighting big boys weekly, twice a week. And here's where they are. They all get their stuff from China, just like most of the video and most of the audio. So I think this applies across the platforms. They get their stuff from China. Well, the Chinese factories are all up and running. I have $1.3 million worth of brand new lights that I bought in January and December sitting in boxes in the warehouse. By the time I get to use them, they'll be 1 year and 2 months old, but they're still sitting in boxes. Well, what has happened is the Chinese have already come out with another wave of new lights, and they've got another wave coming out in October, November. And by March, there'll be a third wave. So when you talk to the lighting vendors, they've got warehouses, and Nook knows this, full of January 2020 lights that they can't sell. And their suppliers have 3 new generations that they can't sell, and they don't have the money to buy the lights from the Chinese because they have no money. And the worst possible scenario will be if designers start specifying Gen 5 stuff that's brand new sitting in the factory, which jumps the Gen 1 stuff that they have in the warehouse and the Gen 2 and 3 that's not even sold yet. So if designers demand a light that's sitting in China, skipping 2 or 3 generations, then again, the trouble for the industry is going to be phenomenal, because people like me will be going, well, wait a minute, I've got, all these brand new lights here. Yeah, but those are a year old now. And, I think that cuts across platforms. So that puts manufacturers in a really tough spot.
Yeah. But Michael, I will say this to you, everybody's in that spot. So if a designer comes to you and says to you, hey, I need the newest, latest, and greatest, nobody is going to have that money to go out and say, yeah, I'm going to give it. So you don't have to worry about somebody stealing your job. And second of all, what I'm talking to everybody's telling me the same thing. If a designer comes to them and says, hey, I want to do this, you're going to say, listen, we've worked together for years and years and years. This is what I've got. This is what you've got to use. And once we get back on our feet, I'll give you anything you need. But for right now, you've got to work with me. And I think that is anyone who doesn't see that is a fool. Because no matter how much money you have, there's only so much money. We only have so much money, and we only have so much time. And the reality is that right now, both are being taken away from us. So it's important for us to keep looking for stuff to do that is going to get us out of where we are, so that we could reinvent ourselves and make some money while we're waiting for things to come back to normal, if it ever does come back to normal. At least that's what I'm hearing. Now, I'd like to bring George Peterson in, because George, I know, has been around forever in our industry. He's well respected. Everybody talks to him, and I want to get what George thinks. George, you got to unmute yourself, bud. And I'll tell you, his mic sounded great. I mean, unbelievable. Wait till you hear him.
Thanks. I guess when you're after a computer, you have to unmute. So it's the same exact situation that Nook was referring to, where you got audio gear. It's out there. One of the problems with, and it's funny because people are always asking me, what is the difference between the recording industry and the live sound industry? I said, well, in the live sound industry, there is no such thing as vintage gear. And having a vintage console, vintage microphone, really drives the recording industry. And in live sound and in lighting, stuff goes out, it gets destroyed, you have to buy more, and stuff is actually treated as expendables. There's nobody going out with a 10-year-old mixing console right now. And the problem is everybody has warehouses full of gear that's not going out. So with all this gear, how are people going to feel about running out and going shopping, or going to a trade show and saying, hey, I need this and this and this and this. Mm-hmm. And it is going to take a long time for this thing to thaw out and for us to recover.
Let's talk to Ken Porter for a second, because Spectrum Sound, they're super well respected in our industry. Ken Porter, everybody knows him. He's the one who got me started in my business. When I was. So what's going on over there?
Well, on the installs, I'm finding that with churches they're giving his back. They have money, but they're very hesitant to spend it because what it would look like if they did major upgrades. They're only spending stuff on things they have to do in order to communicate via streaming, or to do their streaming or whatever drive-in stuff they're doing. Other than that, it's meaning that manufacturers are struggling. Some of the manufacturers, particularly in speakers systems, are realizing they're not going to come back to where they were for 2 years at least, because everybody's got to have lag time to come back, catch up the market. Electronics wise, there'll be some, but mostly there's like small console stuff going into churches at the moment. And then the theater, the theater Live Nation stuff there is not going on because they don't know when they're going to come back and when they're going to be able to pull back and do it. So mostly we're dealing with is stuff that's in the pipeline already. Major construction, long-term install stuff is the only thing that's coming through right now.
Is anyone seeing any new install stuff? Michael, Michael Brown, are you seeing any new installs coming through?
Nothing particularly new past the, we need better video conferencing or upgrade our video conferencing, that sort of stuff. There's still some out there, and the equipment flow for that is getting better. Although the big boys are still, talking to Vadio the other day, it's you place an order today, it'll be 8 to 10 weeks before you see that gear because they just cannot build it fast enough. But on the production side, the permanently installed production systems that we love to do so much, churches aren't even open here. So everything I had on the books in early March as upcoming is still upcoming. I've talked to all of those clients and they're all like, yeah, we're still going to do that, just not yet, because it doesn't make any sense for them to do it until they either open or they at least know when they will be open. My guess is on the church side, the next big push won't be till Christmas, and it may not be as big as it normally is.
So now I just read it today, just a few seconds before we turn this on, that the Raiders are going to be opening in Allegiant Stadiums with no fans whatsoever. And based on the news, they are going to take the biggest hit of all of the teams in the NFL. Michael, what do you see a team like that? I mean, how much money is going to be lost in sports, and what could they do to capture that back? Because sports really gives us a lot of activity from sound and lighting. What are you seeing that way?
The NFL is a $28 billion business. I think many of you know, I know Jimmy Haslam, who owns the Cleveland Browns. Talk to him regularly. They make phenomenal revenue off of their television contracts, and that's why they're going ahead, because the TV contracts, they make money off the television. Are they concerned about having fans or not having fans? At this point, it's a team-by-team decision. Some teams have already made the decision not to have fans, but others haven't. The income from fans and from popcorn and from parking is, I won't say it's incremental income, but it's not as relevant as the television income. So, they're in a good spot to survive because of the television income. And the same thing's true of the NCAA. If they don't have a fan in the stands, they make so much money off the TV deal. Now, the greatest worry of both the NCAA and of the NFL, and again, I'm on the board, every board there is over at UT, including the athletics board, but in talking to Jimmy and other NFL people I know, both NFL and NCAA, as we all know, for years have lost viewers, or lost attendance to what? To television. Well, they're scared to death that if they run this season with no fans or with less fans, that more people are going to make that decision to stay at home and drink beer at home and watch the game because it's not that bad. And the NCAA has lost 30% of their viewership in the last 4 years. They're afraid that's going to drop to, not viewership, their attendance. They're afraid that's going to drop to 50% after COVID because of reduced people being in the stands.
Right. Well, so far, as far as sports goes, I've watched the NBA and it looks like a pickup game without the audience in the crowd, and what they're doing with the streaming of the televisions look unbelievably rinky. Yes, Nick.
Well, the NHL, I think that what they're doing in hockey is revolutionizing that. Hockey is doing the bubble just like the top-ranked boxing guys are in Vegas. Like in Vegas, they went in for 6 weeks. Nobody left the hotel. Once they got checked out, they had a separate elevator that took them right to the convention center where the boxing rings are. So they're doing that in the hockey now with the 16 teams playing, and half are in, I think, Edmonton and half are in Vancouver. I'm not sure the two towns, but they've redone over the surfaces and put video walls in and covered the seats with nice stuff, with nice fabric that has lights on it. It's actually nice to watch. It was fun. It was just as good as if they had people. I think baseball, putting fake people in the stands, that was kind of like an idea that Fox went with, and it was kind of cool, but then it's abandoned. And baseball is I mean, it's the same as the people watching NASCAR. You're watching something on TV without fans. It's a little different, but it's good to have. But the hockey thing, they're the first ones that have added entertainment. They've added video walls in at the red line in the middle. They've got other lights that scan around and go crazy when goals are scored. they've made it more fun. They've made it more like rollerball or something.
Have they dealt in with video projection, video mapping?
I haven't really seen that. I mean, that was always done more on the ice. They can't do that while the people are playing, but I haven't watched enough myself to see if they're doing video mapping on the scrims above the floor. But Tom Kinney's the LD out there, and I talked to him and the other production designers. I'll ask that. That could be a financial thing.
Yeah. And also, Terry, talking about the entertainment business through communications of, through Timeless, how are you getting out to, you're in the same boat as we're in. What are you doing as far as, advertising and getting advertisers to participate in what you're doing, and how are you reinventing yourself there?
It's a struggle like everything else. I mean, our business is down 55%, and I don't see it changing until this whole thing is behind us. But we try to give digital solutions more of a precedent. The email blast. But I want to step back just for a second, Jan. I think the NBA looks pretty good. Why did you say it looked like a pickup game?
Well, because it seemed to me that without the fans, without the noise, without any of the excitement, it seems that the players were just not the same. I can't put it in words, but it just seemed like that I was watching a non-professional game. There was just something really missing from that.
Well, I thought they did a pretty good job. They got video screens all the way around where they're playing, and they got fans that's popping up on the screens at different times. And each time a team is doing a home game, they have all of their crowd noise piped in when they're making a rally and that sort of thing. So I thought it was as good as it could possibly get myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I see Chris Fenwick. You have a question for anyone? Now, this is an expert. Okay.
No, yeah, right. I just want to say I'm not specifically involved in your industry. I'm a video editor, and I spend most of my time editing extremely large, 200-foot wide videos for large conferences and stuff like that. And there was a frame of mind that our company took at the beginning of all of this, even before the lockdown. And I said that what we as a company needed to do was to concentrate on our core competencies. And also, I just want to say that if you want to just flush everything I say after I say it, I find no fault in this. But what we do is we help people communicate. Sometimes we do it on giant screens. A lot of times we do it on little screens. And it's important to look at what is available and not dwell on what's not available. I agree. I used to switch a lot of NBA basketball, in the truck outside the stadium, the arena. And yeah, basketball is much better with, 15,000 fans in the arena. But if there's a little bit of work to be had, if there's a little bit to be done, we need to concentrate on what we can do and not what we're not doing. 2020 was going to be the year of 8K HDR in my business, and I'm lucky to cut little tiny 720p web videos for people this year, but we're doing it. And so I think that with all of these things, we need to rethink things. We need to look at, I'm not selling giant consoles, but can I sell little consoles to churches that need to stream? I don't know. It's just just a frame of mind that's helped us get through things.
We'd have to sell too many of them, and that's the challenge. And I sell that, so we'd have to sell too many of them. But I do have an idea, and I talked about it before. It's called the Utopian Village, and basically, because now I see that the bubble thing is working for basketball players, but wouldn't you think? And Michael, your venues that are in the woods, wouldn't it be possible to say, okay, we're going to create a bubble situation where we are bringing in audiences. We're going to bring in an audience. They're going to agree to this, and this quarantine, and and we're going to house them and we're going to isolate them so that we can have events. Is that a possibility?
I don't see how it is. I mean, who has 2 weeks to go sit in a bubble if you're not getting paid to do it? I mean,
well, I mean, maybe there's a way to get money out of it. I don't know, but if anybody could do it, I think it would be you, Michael. That you would come up with the idea of an isolated situation of a utopian village, because I know what people are going through right now to get out of the States to go to a place where there is no COVID. So if they would spend tens of thousands of dollars to do that, I'm sure there would be people that would spend tens of thousands of dollars to get isolated, to be in a situation where there is no COVID, and so that they can see concerts and they can, and if there's enough of them, well, then all of a sudden we're all back in business.
well, it wouldn't be all of us. It would be the one sound company, the one light company, and the one video company that were there.
That's only in one area, but we would have to spread this out. It would have to be like a franchise situation. I don't think I'm crazy. I mean, George, what do you think? Am I nuts? Well, don't answer that like that. But
you might be a little crazy, Jan.
yeah.
Hey, Jen.
Back to the sports thing, is that in the past 20 years, we've gravitated to in-person sports and TV sports. You know, football became a TV sport very heavily back in the 70s when they brought up instant replay. When racing has become an in-person sport because they were able to do replay in replay wrecks and all that stuff there and passes and stuff at that point, and they build the story through the race around that. The problem with basketball and hockey is neither one of them really translate well into TV. You know, they tried the glowing puck on hockey. They've tried the ISO camera shot on certain people in basketball, but it never really translated well into I'd rather watch it on TV than go in person. So I think you're kind of very from that. They're trying to force something that's not really natural.
Yes.
Well, I think it's actually kind of the reverse of what you just said. Hockey and basketball are much smaller venues. So they are, in my experience, always much more fun to watch in person. Right. Whereas a football game, and let me take a moment to point out that Mike Strickland is from the other UT, not the University of Texas, which is the UT. When I
real UT.
When I go to see the Longhorns play, and I pay $400 a ticket, that $400 a ticket is top section in the corner probably. I'm literally hundreds of feet away from the action, and it just doesn't mean that much at that level. So yeah, I'd rather watch it at home. But hockey and basketball are much more immediate. When you're in there, especially hockey, and you're close to the rink, you're in the action. Basketball, when I lived in Dallas, half court seats on the third row. Many times I caught the ball coming out of bounds. It's much more immediate. So, and look, even you go to football now, what do most people do at a professional football game? How do they watch the game? They look up at the giant Jumbotron. The game's happening live right there, but they watch the screen.
So the money is in the suites.
Yeah. If you can go to a suite, then that's sweet.
Jan, what you suggested, Ken Porter and I are actually doing, and there's the number one private resort in the world is here. It's a place called Blackberry Farm. It's where the rich and the famous go. Mick Jagger and Paul McCartney and Rupert Murdoch and Gwyneth Paltrow. It's a place up in the woods where the rich and famous go, and Ken and I do all of the sound and lights and whatnot for 3, 4, 5 events every month. But that place was socially distancing for years because they're really wealthy people. And we'll do, 3 years ago, we did a show up there with Carole King, who came out of retirement to do it. And there was a whopping 40 people. And they've got so much money that they already sat 10 feet apart because they're extraordinarily wealthy. And, right. And that was, for me, Ken, that was one of the first live shows that came back. I don't know if it was for you guys or not, but now we're doing 3 or 4 a month. And again, they're socially distanced because they're fabulously wealthy.
Well, look, the wealthy, there's nothing wrong with tapping into that wealth market because I mean, I would like to, take care of the masses, but I want to take care of you guys as well. So if we had 10 millionaires or even 1 millionaire, like just what happened with Goldman Sachs, where that guy put on a concert, he just did it wrong. Had he would have not opened the gates to so many people, that would have been a success. And the sound company, the lighting company, and all of the facilitaries around it would have all made money, and they would have kept doing it. But it has to be done right, and I see that that's an opportunity. I mean, right now, the work that I see is happening outdoors. The church services outdoors, the small shows outdoors, those things where people are separated out, and we'll be talking about this over and over again, but the reality is I am looking for a way to see how we can all make some money together and survive other than waiting for the government to give us some money so that we can survive. Now, we've been going a long time and I can go forever with this. Is there anybody that would like to say anything else before we close? Tom Source, and then Chip Self, and then...
You want to unmute? Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Terry, I want to say hi to Terry Lowe. Hey, brother, how you doing?
Hey, Tom.
I want to pick up on something that Nook touched on. And during this period of time, I encourage each and every one of you to look at your self-care, take it seriously, spend some time every day managing your health, whether it's meditation, exercise, going out for a walk. Really take time for yourself. There's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and the best thing we can do for each other is stay healthy to get to the backside of this. So please, I encourage you, take care of yourselves.
Good advice. Chip?
Thomas, that's a great point. Let me interject something I've been saying for 2 weeks now. As tough as it's been, whether you're a freelancer or a company owner or whatever you are, as tough as it's been getting to this point, and this is kind of the good news, bad news, it's halftime. We've got as far to go as we've come, and maintaining mental health individually, personally, for the people that work with, in, and around you. The challenges that we face between now and January of next year are going to be infinitely larger than the challenges we faced in the last 5 months, because literally there's little to no money and there's little to nothing to do, and we now know that. So mental health, Tom, to your point, we're going to be spending a lot of time on that personally and corporately.
I think that's a great idea. Is there anyone else that would like to say anything? Steve, you've sat and watched the whole thing and you haven't said 2 words. So what do you have to say for yourself?
I'm good right now, man. I mean, I'm
fishing camp.
enjoying listening to everybody. And
when are we opening that fishing camp? And can we do a show up there? I mean, can we get a nice?
Oh, yeah. I'm leaving Friday. I'll be fishing Friday and Saturday.
Well, look, I really want to put Terry on the spot right now, and I want to say, hey, Terry, we really appreciate you coming in, George and Nook. I think you've added so much, but I would like to add more. And Michael, of course, you are our lifeline to what's going on around us, and I really appreciate it. I mean, to be blunt with you, I begged Michael to come in for only 5 minutes, and I am so honored and so thankful that you have spent as much time with us as possible. And I want you to know, I would love to make it so that you had 5 minutes every week just to give everybody an update of what's going on, So I really thank you. And Terry, I'd like you to be part of this. And you guys, I want everyone to feel like this is not just mine, but you're part of this Mastermind Roundtable that we're going to build up, and we're going to tell people, and we're going to come up with some ideas so that we can survive these tough times. And so I thank you all. Is there anybody else who want to say anything before we go?
Well, Jan, I want to say that thank you for putting all this together. I know you put a lot of work in preparing all of this, and I think you have missed your calling in life because you should have been doing a talk show a long time ago.
Yeah.
All I could say is I'm going to leave you with this, as you told me last week, because it almost made me cry when everybody said, you make it happen. And that's what I've been saying forever. And we are all going to make it happen. And you are the ones that are going to make it happen. So go out and make it happen. Be safe. Ken?
I got a question for the media guys. there was supposedly a festival in Europe somewhere that was done in a hotel where they blocked out hotels that had balconies and leased the hotels and did everybody in private suite, in suites of the hotel, and they
Yeah.
controlled the stuff there. How did that go? Did it make any money, and could that ever come here?
Yeah, it's actually a good idea. What they did is the hotel sold the rooms for $280 a night, and were able to have, I think, 48 different rooms go. So it was local music, like local DJs and bands playing that kind of stuff. But it's a brilliant idea. I don't know how many hotels are set up like that, where you could go out and do it, but most of them would be a Holiday Inn type thing, right? One of those type things, or the Riot House in LA would work perfect for that. But is it a way to make money? I don't know. I think we're all grasping at straws, but I thought it was a great idea.
Jan, who's our Canadian friend that isn't with us today?
That was, let me just remember, that was from the Commodore Ballroom. But I know you. Oh, Ron was the one from.
Yeah, he followed that show, and he said technically it worked fine, but it probably wouldn't happen again because it's too small of a scale. If you have a hotel building that's 30 or 40 stories tall, yes, you have more rooms and potentially you can sell more rooms, but realistically, only the first 5 or 6 stories matter, right? So, so he had followed it and said it worked and it made money in that particular scenario, but it wasn't translating well to bigger scale.
Well, I am convinced of Utopian Village, and if we all put our minds together, we could create that. We could create a Utopian Village, but I'd rather see the industry come back together. And I think if we could just encourage everybody to wear a mask, do some social distancing, this will all come together. Because right now, what they're finding is that when they sent in Missouri, I believe it was Missouri, it might be wrong about that, but they sent everybody back to school. One day later, now they had to quarantine everybody. So we're starting to see that we can't do it like that. And maybe if enough people realize that, we will be able to get to a point where people will social distance. We'll shut the thing down for 2 weeks with masks, and the virus will be gone, rather than waiting for vaccines or waiting. But we need to do that on a national basis, like every other, like the country like Italy did. Italy's back to normal. I have friends living in Italy. They're going out to dinner. They're having a good time. People in China, they're all back. Singapore. So there's a lot of countries. Canada had 5 cases. So there's a lot of countries out there that are surviving quite well and going back to somewhat normal. Of course, they have to be vigilant so that if they see a hot spot, they jump on it right away. They do contact tracing, but we're not there yet. And the only way to do it is guys like Michael have got to get to these people and say, hey, man, you got to, we'll see what happens. I mean, we're in an election year, so things are crazy. But the reality is you make it happen. So go out and make it happen. Do what you can. Be safe, be sound, and use your common sense. That's all I could say. Use your common sense.
And there's a big experiment going on in South Dakota. It's called Sturgis. They're going to have 7 days of concerts and things like that. And I already saw pictures from that where people are not wearing, there's tens of thousands of people there already, and the event doesn't even start until Friday. And they're already not using masks, not using distancing, and that is going to be a big experiment to see what happens there.
They're all going to jump on their bikes and go home all over the United States.
Don't get me started, man.
The other question, why isn't the health department stopping smoking and vaping and, talk about health-wise, vitamin C, vitamin D, trace minerals, and all that stuff?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go back to watching TikTok as soon as we get off this meeting. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jan.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks for having this meeting. And thank you, Michael, for all the information, and Terry and Nook and George. That's great stuff.
Could I say thank you again to everybody for all that you do, and realize when you get the next call to action, which will emanate out of Terry and his various platforms, take it seriously, because hopefully you'll get one in the next 30 hours and maybe one the day after. There's none more important than this one, because it'll be focused, it'll be targeted, and we've got to get as many messages into the legislators' email boxes as we possibly can, because once we have this targeted ask, it will be extraordinarily important. And I know there's probably call to action strain at this point, but let's work it. And it is working because of everybody in this email and all the people are in this Zoom and all the phenomenal people within this industry, and we'll get across the goal line.
It's not just in this room. There's thousands of people watching right now. So
that's in this group, chat, whatever.
Yeah. So I hope they all got the message, the call to action. Nook, George, Terry, I hope you can come back next week as well. And Michael, of course, you're always welcome as well. And if there's anybody else that has anything to say, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to shut off the recording. And right now, let's party. Yeah, let's party.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks for coming.
Bye, Jan.
See you next week.
Next week.